Matt and Stacy, and we are at the last talk. We've saved the best for last. Decades ago, our final speaker envisioned much of the world that we live in today, digital currencies, immersive worlds. It all appeared in his novels, and he even coined the term Metaverse. Today, he continues to build a layer 1 blockchain built for the open Metaverse. It's called Lamina 1. And funny enough, it was launched right here at Consensus 2 years ago. Please join me in welcoming the last OG that will grant this stage for 2024, the OG of the Metaverse, Neal Stephenson, in conversation with Mark Long.
Neal, first off, I want to congratulate you on launching Lamina 1. I think you launched it 2 years ago here at Consensus.
That's when it got started, yeah, and we've gone to mainnet just within the last couple of weeks. So it's been a couple of years of hard work by the team, through the depths of the crypto winter and all the trials and tribulations that you know very well.
Yeah.
To get to this point. Thank you.
Well, I don't think Neal needs much introduction, the man behind the Metaverse. But it's worth stating that over the past 30 years, his novels have anticipated innovations that have changed the world, including technologies like AI, virtual reality, and cryptocurrency. So I'd like to start with the convergence in reality and fiction, where you got it right and where you think you got it wrong, on the cultural and political conditions that catalyzed these changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost more interesting to talk about the wrong stuff in a way. I think one thing I got wrong with Snow Crash was that the real catalyst that brought three-dimensional immersive experiences to everyone turned out to be games, video games. So Doom came out the year after Snow Crash. And the same year, I think, was when the World Wide Web got launched, and both of those drove demand for graphics hardware that caused the cost of graphics to just drop precipitously ever since. And so that's how we actually got to where we are today, with the ability to render three-dimensional worlds and the ability for ordinary people to navigate those worlds.
Snow Crash predicted so many technical and sociological trends in the real world, virtual worlds, digital currencies, the pervasiveness and I think the banality of the internet, and the expanding control and influence of companies. What was going on culturally at that time that influenced you to write Snow Crash?
I had been, for reasons, I'd been living in suburban New Jersey for a couple of years and just driving around suburban areas that were kind of going to seed, like ghost malls and just up and down these franchise strips. And I just thought of that as, in a way, a more, if you're going to write a novel about what the future is going to look like, and it's going to be a kind of realistic dystopian novel, that's the right setting for it, because that's where people live, and that's what's covering most of our real estate. So it kind of started with that and the idea of just suburbia and cookie cutter housing developments and franchises that had kind of gone to the next level and become actual, independent countries in effect.
When people talk about the metaverse, they often, I think, limit their understanding to virtual reality, but you took a much different, I'd say, transmedia approach. And with Lamina, you're building rails to enable the metaverse. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to the idea of VR or AR, I worked at at Magic Leap for 6 years. Our CEO, Rebecca Barkin, worked there for quite a while. Both of us were working on building immersive experiences in augmented reality, and that was great. You know, I think we're all big fans of those kinds of experiences, but the reality is that right now the market of people who have rectangular screens in front of them is many orders of magnitude larger than the market of people who have goggles, and so one key thing is to kind of try to break this connection that exists in people's minds between the metaverse and wearing goggles, because that's how it is in the book. But we think that most people who experience immersive, you know, three-dimensional experiences for the foreseeable future are going to be doing it through just rectangular two-dimensional screens. And then to the second part of your question, the basic idea behind what we're doing is pretty simple, and it is that, you know, if the metaverse is going to be a thing that's visited and used every day by millions of people, then there have to be experiences in the metaverse that people enjoy having, which seems almost too obvious to mention, but you know, a lot of the tech companies that are building the hardware of the future metaverse are very uneasy with investing in content creation. It just doesn't fit with their business model. It's just a foreign country to them in a lot of ways. So the basic idea behind what we're doing at Lamina One is that before anything else happens, we've got to lay down an economic foundation that will make it possible and easy for content creators to actually get paid in the event that something they make turns out to be popular and well regarded. And from the very beginning, we've been staying in touch with what you guys are doing at Shrapnel, because it's very closely aligned with kind of that basic idea. You've got to provide an experience, but you've got to provide a way for people who add to it, who create user-generated content or whatever, to maintain ownership of what they create, and to get rewarded, get some equivalent of royalties or what have you, based on the amount of success that their creations meet with.
What about interoperability? What are your opinions of that, and how do you think that'll evolve?
So there was going back a year and a half, there was kind of a lot of rage on the internet among game developers directed at blockchain culture, because apparently they kept hearing from people who didn't understand game development, but who were sort of ideologically excited about the idea of interoperable assets. And if you're pushing that idea from a point of view that is naive about how game engines actually work, then it just seems really stupid and kind of disrespectful to game makers. Game developers put enormous amounts of effort and attention into creating immersive universes that are art-directed and balanced in a way that makes them aesthetically satisfying. And the idea that you could, what was your analogy? You talked about, bringing a sniper rifle into a soccer game. Yeah. That obviously that's just abhorrent to the people who designed the soccer game. So interoperability in that kind of naive sense is something that I don't think well-informed people believe in, and it caused a lot of consternation, I think, when people started talking about it. But if you think in terms of building for interoperability from the ground up, it's a whole different thing from trying to introduce foreign objects into an existing game. And if you look at some of the biggest experiences that are really part of the metaverse today, so Fortnite, Roblox, et al., those are aesthetically, those are sort of mashups by design. So you can go into Fortnite and you can be part of a team that consists of John Wick and Han Solo and a blue banana, and that's aesthetically totally incoherent, but nobody who's playing that game cares because it's just part of the fun and the spirit of it. So the future of interoperability, I think, lies more in the direction of those kinds of mashup experiences and experiences that are built from the ground up to be to support interoperability, as contrasted with this notion that we're going to somehow be able to bring blasters into Assassin's Creed or something like that.
When you talked about Fortnite, you made me think of Tim Sweeney's new Verse programming language, where he has the concept of shared transactional memory. He has a vision for, I could drive a car from one game into the next game.
Fortnite into Roblox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 10 years before Bitcoin, Cryptonomicon predicted cryptocurrency, but my take on the novel was that it was much more about information theory and information control. Looking back, what aspects of cryptocurrency and information theory did Cryptonomicon get right, and again, that missed?
Wrong, yeah. Yeah, so that grew out of, in a way, it was a delayed consequence of writing Snow Crash, because after Snow Crash came out, I got to know some people in the Bay Area cypherpunks and people who had been working on a system called Habitat, which was a metaverse system that existed before I even wrote the book. They had kind of realized that to build that kind of system, you were going to have a state of affairs in which you might end up running somebody else's code on your computer. You almost have to do that in order to make a metaverse type experience. And so that created these obvious security issues. And so they were way ahead of their time in thinking about that, and also in thinking about money. So I remember, I would go down there every so often and hang out with those people. And for a while, it was all about privacy and running code. And then I went down like a few months later, and they were all talking about money, because the idea had taken hold that hey, wait a second, digital currency could be a thing and could be very important, and was ideologically aligned with the kind of libertarian point of view that a lot of those people had. So at that period, being pre-blockchain, the presumption was that in order to have secure currency and secure transactions, you would have to have a physical location with hardware that was beyond the reach of governments, of intrusive governments. And so there was a lot of interest in building data centers on sea land, or building them in certain jurisdictions like Anguilla that they were viewed as being just more safer from government invasion than the United States. So from a storytelling point of view, that's all fantastic because it immediately creates this scenario where you've got nerds who have to go to strange locations around the world to build their data center. That's a great recipe for a story, but it's not what happened. What happened was blockchain, and the whole point of blockchain is that you don't need that secure server in a special jurisdiction. And so instead, it's kind of this diffuse network of nodes all over the world, which is a much better idea, works a lot better, but it's not as great, fodder for an adventure novel,
It seems AI's many winters of discontentment are made glorious summer by large language models now. But the relationship between AI and creative dev is super complex. I use AI to iterate creatively when I get started on something, but I'm very worried about its impact on the artists that I work with in particular. I don't want to see them lose their jobs. Recently, we've seen Google and Meta, OpenAI approach movie studios, and they want to train on their catalogs. And I know you're a producer yourself, and that Lamina One has incorporated Gen AI tools into its platform to support permission co-creation. So how about you solve this problem for us?
Yeah, so to that last point, if you put your work up on Lamina One, there's a box you can check to determine whether or not it can be used for training AIs. So that is a thing that we've built in from the start, but it's sort of, to a large extent, it's closing the barn door after the horses have bolted, because as you say, these models are being trained on the entire internet. So I'm interested to see how the producers and actors and writers unions react to this idea that somehow the studios have the right to allow that kind of training. That's going to be a really interesting question for entertainment lawyers. But regardless of that, I think what it speaks to is a kind of cultural divide between tech people and creatives that is really weird. I mean, it was really thrown into high relief last week by the Scarlett Johansson situation, which just makes the people who did that look really bad,
Yeah.
and it's just such an own goal, in a way that they didn't have to go down that road, but tech people are, I think, fascinated by content creation and by art. They're all fans of books and movies and video games that are made by creative artists, and yet they have a hard time investing in it. They have a hard time valuing it. On the one hand, they give it a very high, they assign a very high value to it, but when it comes down to business transactions, they act like it's worth nothing. So the problem going forward is going to be how to it just seems like the first use of any new technology is to make things even shittier for artists, who are like, I mean, I don't know why you would pick on them, but that's always the way it seems to go, and so we've got to find a way to reverse that and bring kind of honor and prestige and income back to the creative artists who actually bring in the audience and make these technology platforms worth something.
The studios allowing these large language or large visual models to train on their catalog even makes me visualize, you know, that cartoon of the guy that's sawing off the branch that he's sitting on. It's like incredibly short-sighted because they're in the content creation business.
Yeah, yeah, so.
We know blockchain and AI can combine to bring critical verification to identity and IP ownership. Any last thoughts on how we take advantage of that capability?
Well, what we'd like to do is find an enforceable way for the equivalent of royalties to flow back to artists, you know, who have posted things on the chain. And there was kind of a stunning moment a year or two ago when it became widely understood that smart contracts weren't actually enforceable. You know, it was that it was possible to circumvent these say royalty contracts just by carrying out transactions on a different marketplace. So, and there have been efforts made to bring those contracts into the realm of legal enforceability. Last year I worked with the late Josh Kramer at Grapevine Ventures, who had built a legally binding system for creating smart contracts that would stand up in court. And there are similar efforts being made by Materium in the UK, which, as I understand it, are based on you know, really solid understanding of the relevant law in the UK. You know, what we need to do is make those kind of the standard way that business gets done in the creative industries, because you know, in building a game, the game is a huge collection of assets, right? You know, and so sound files, textures, materials, meshes, all the different elements that show up in Unreal Engine or Unity. Those are all created typically by different categories of artists. You'll have some people who just do animations, you know, or do particular. Well, I do quadruped animations, you know, or whatever. So it gets very specialized, and all of those assets have to work together in order to make the immersive experience as a whole actually come to life and delight the users. And normally we do that in the context of a big game studio that's somewhat centralized, and that works, but it kind of raises the question of, is there a way to distribute it and make it so that people can collaborate with each other and create collections of assets that carry their provenance with them, and that carry their royalty tails, as it were, along with them in a way that's enforceable and automatic and cheap.
As a game developer, I have to ask, what are you playing lately?
I've been playing almost exclusively Valheim for the last couple of years, and it's just because I have a couple of friends who that I play with on a regular basis, and just during COVID, you know, that was a thing we did quite a bit. So that's been a really fun game to see it start from its origins as a kind of early access,
Yeah.
you know, somewhat limited project to something that's become a lot bigger and more extensive over the years.
And what are you reading right now?
I'm reading a book by your friend Caroline Alexander about, what's it called? The Skies of Thunder?
Yeah, Skies of Thunder.
Skies of Thunder, yeah. One of the weird things about reading books today is that sometimes you don't know the title. Because if you never see the physical copy, if it's on a Kindle or whatever, it can be easy to lose track of that. Skies of Thunder is a historical account of the flying over the hump during World War II, where Western China was being resupplied by material that was being brought into India, and so they had to fly these planes over the Himalayas in horrific conditions in order to get ammunition and fuel and other stuff to the Chinese nationalist forces. And it's a great adventure story, and it's extremely well told. So, highly recommended.
Neal, thank you for speaking with us today, and I'd like to thank Consensus for having both of us.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Mark. All right, guys, that is a wrap. Consensus 2024 closing up. Look, I want to say a few thank yous before we do this. First of all, a big thank you to our main stage sponsors, Zebu, and then to all the other sponsors who are so critical to us putting on an event like this. I want to thank the production team behind every one of these stages and putting all this stuff together. They've been incredible. It is an enormous effort to make something like this go forward. The whole staff at the ACC, this is our third year we've been doing this now in Austin, and they've just been tremendous. Of course, I cannot do any less but say an enormous thank you to all of my friends and colleagues at CoinDesk who I've worked with over the last 4 years, and the incredible amount of work that goes into pulling off this thing every year. We have plenty more on the way. You guys, we want to thank all of you, and I'm talking to you. I'm also talking to all the people on live stream who've joined us. Without you, this thing doesn't happen, so thank you so much for being a part of it. We have plenty more to come because, as we told you yesterday, we will be heading to Hong Kong, the very first overseas version of Consensus in Hong Kong in February, and then Toronto. We're saying goodbye to Austin in May. So please do try to be at one or both, preferably, of those Consensuses. We really hope to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your time in Austin, and thank you so much for being a part of this. Bye-bye.